Imagine standing at the altar in your beautiful wedding dress, surrounded by friends and family, ready to say, "I do." But just as the vows are about to be exchanged, a shocking truth is revealed, one that shatters your dreams in front of everyone. The man you love, the one who promised you forever, suddenly turns his back on you. What happens when a woman is publicly humiliated on what was supposed to be the happiest day of her life? And years later, the same people who mocked her come crawling back, begging for her forgiveness. Before we begin this interesting story, make sure to subscribe to our channel, like this video, and drop a comment below. Trust me, you don't want to miss this one. The church was packed with guests, all dressed in their finest attire. Soft whispers filled the air as people admired the breathtaking decorations. White roses lined the aisle, and a golden chandelier sparkled above. At the front, Mark stood tall, looking sharp in his custom-fitted navy blue suit. At the back of the church, Evelyn, the bride, took a deep breath. She was a vision in her lace wedding gown, her veil slightly covering her glowing face. Her heart raced with excitement. Today was supposed to be the happiest day of her life. The organist played the bridal march, and Evelyn walked gracefully down the aisle, her father by her side. Mark smiled as she approached, but something about his expression seemed off. The priest began the ceremony. Everything was perfect until it was time for the vows. "Mark, do you take Evelyn to be your lawfully wedded wife?" Silence. The entire church fell quiet. Mark's face darkened. He took a deep breath and looked directly at Evelyn. I can't do this." Gasps echoed through the hall. Evelyn's hands trembled. "Mark, what are you saying?" Mark took a step back. "I can't marry you, Evelyn. I found out the truth about you." The crowd erupted in murmurs. Evelyn's eyes darted around, her mind racing. "What truth?" Mark turned to the guest and raised his voice. "He's a liar. A fraud. Evelyn has been pretending to be someone she's not." A cold chill ran down Evelyn's spine. She shook her head. "Mark, please." "I received a message last night," Mark continued, his voice filled with anger. "Evelyn is not as innocent as she pretends to be. She was once involved with another man, a secret she kept from me. How can I trust someone like that?" Tears streamed down Evelyn's face. "That's not true. Who told you this?" Mark pulled out his phone and held up a screenshot. "These messages. Proof that you've been lying." Evelyn's world spun. The messages were fake. Someone had set her up. "Mark, you have to believe me. I don't know where those messages came from." But Mark had already made up his mind. He tossed his wedding ring to the floor and walked out of the church, leaving Evelyn standing alone at the altar, humiliated, heartbroken, and shattered. The days that followed were unbearable. Social media was flooded with posts about the disgraced bride. People laughed at her pain, creating memes and cruel jokes. Evelyn's phone rang non-stop, but she ignored every call. Even her so-called friends turned against her, believing the rumors. The worst betrayal came from her family. "You have shamed us," her mother yelled. "How could you lie to your fiancé?" "But I didn't," Evelyn sobbed. "Someone set me up." Her father shook his head. "The evidence is clear. Mark was right to leave. Evelyn couldn't take it anymore. She packed her bags that night and left home. I will prove my innocence, she whispered to herself, and when I do, they will regret ever doubting me. Years passed. Evelyn worked hard to rebuild her life. She moved to a different city and started her own business. What began as a small catering service grew into one of the most successful restaurants in Lagos. People who once mocked her now admired her success from afar. One evening, while watching TV, Evelyn's heart nearly stopped. A breaking news report flashed across the screen. Mark had been exposed for corruption at his company. He was now jobless and facing legal action. Evelyn watched silently, feeling neither joy nor pity. "Karma," she whispered. But she had no idea that soon, Mark and the others who betrayed her would come knocking begging for her forgiveness. Evelyn leaned back on the leather chair in her office, her fingers drumming against the glass table. She had just finished watching the breaking news marks fall from grace. A bitter smile played on her lips. Years ago, he had humiliated her in front of hundreds, branding her a liar. Now, the same world that had mocked her was watching him crumble. Her assistant, David, entered her office. "Madam, there's someone at the reception asking to see you." Evelyn barely looked up from her laptop. "Who is it?" David hesitated. "It's Mark." Evelyn froze. She slowly raised her head, her expression unreadable. "Mark?" "Yes, ma'am." "He looks desperate." 1,000 emotions rushed through her, but she kept her face calm. "Let him in." David nodded and left. A few moments later, the door opened, and Mark stepped in. Evelyn barely recognized him. The confident, well-dressed man she once loved was gone. His suit was wrinkled, his face tired. There were dark circles under his eyes, and his hands trembled slightly. "Evelyn," he breathed. "You look different." She leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms. "Time changes people, Mark." Mark swallowed hard. "I know I have no right to be here. But I need your help." Evelyn raised a brow. "My help?" Mark sighed heavily and ran a hand through his unkempt hair. "After my company collapsed, I lost everything. My friends, my connections, even my family turned their backs on me." Evelyn studied him silently. A few years ago, she had been the one standing in front of him, pleading for understanding. But he hadn't listened. She tapped her fingers against the desk. "So, what exactly do you want from me?" Mark hesitated. "I need a job." Silence. Then, Evelyn chuckled softly. "A job?" Mark nodded quickly. "Yes. I heard about your restaurant. It's one of the biggest in the city now. I thought maybe you could find something for me." Evelyn tilted her head, pretending to think. "You humiliated me on what was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. You didn't even listen to me. And now, years later, you want my help." Mark lowered his head in shame. "I regret everything, Evelyn. I was foolish. I let others control me. If I could go back, I would have trusted you." Evelyn stood up and walked to the window. She stared at the busy streets below, lost in thought. Then, she turned back to him. "I'll think about it," she said simply. Mark's eyes lit up with hope. "Thank you, Evelyn. I won't let you down." But Evelyn wasn't done. She had one final test for him. That evening, Evelyn sat in her penthouse, sipping a glass of wine. Her heart was still racing from Mark's visit. Could she really trust him again? Just then, her phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. "If you want to know who really destroyed your wedding, meet me at Silver Lounge by 9 p.m. Evelyn frowned. A part of her told her to ignore it, but her curiosity won. At exactly 9 p.m., she arrived at the dimly lit lounge. She spotted a man sitting in the corner, his face hidden under a cap. Cautiously, she approached. "Are you the one who sent the message?" The man looked up, and Evelyn gasped. It was David, Mark's former best friend and best man at their wedding. "David," she whispered. "Why are you here?" David looked around nervously. "I don't have much time. I came to confess something." Evelyn's heart pounded. "What is it?" David took a deep breath. "I was the one who sent Mark those fake messages on your wedding day." Evelyn's body stiffened. "You?" "Yes. And I wasn't alone." He clenched his fist. Sarah was involved too. Evelyn's mind spun. Sarah had been her bridesmaid, her closest friend. "Why would you do this?" David sighed. "Sarah was in love with Mark. She couldn't stand the thought of you two getting married. So, she planned everything. She convinced me to help, promising that we'd both gain something." Evelyn gritted her teeth. "And what did you gain?" David lowered his gaze. "Money. Sarah's father paid me handsomely to make sure the wedding never happened." Evelyn's stomach twisted in disgust. "So you ruined my life for money?" David looked ashamed. "I regret it, Evelyn. I swear. That's why I'm telling you the truth now." Evelyn clenched her fist. The betrayal cut deep. But now, she had proof. And she knew exactly what to do next. The next morning, Evelyn arranged a meeting at her restaurant. She invited Mark, Sarah, and David, but none of them knew the others would be there. Sarah arrived first, dressed in designer clothes, still as arrogant as ever. "Evelyn," she greeted, faking a smile. "It's been years. I heard about your success. You must be so proud." Evelyn kept her face emotionless. "Sit." Sarah smirked and sat down. Next, Mark arrived. When he saw Sarah, his expression darkened. "What is she doing here?" Evelyn folded her arms. "You see." Finally, David walked in. The moment Sarah saw him, her smile vanished. Evelyn leaned forward. "I called you all here for one reason. To expose the truth." Sarah shifted uncomfortably. "What truth?" Evelyn's eyes burned with fury. "The truth about how you ruined my wedding." Mark turned to Sarah, confusion on his face. "What is she talking about?" Evelyn didn't wait. She gestured at David. "Tell him." David swallowed hard and confessed everything, how Sarah manipulated him, how they created fake messages, and how they destroyed Evelyn's life for selfish reasons. Mark's face turned pale. He slowly turned to Sarah. Tell me he's lying. Sarah's face twisted in panic. Mark, don't listen to him. She's trying to turn you against me. Evelyn shook her head. Lies don't work anymore, Sarah. Mark clenched his fist. You ruined my life. You made me throw away the best thing that ever happened to me. Sarah opened her mouth to defend herself, but Mark wasn't listening. He stood up abruptly. I don't ever want to see you again. Then, he turned to Evelyn. I don't even know how to ask for forgiveness. Evelyn stared at him for a long moment. Then, she took a deep breath. Mark, I spent years trying to prove my innocence. And now that the truth is out, I finally have my answer. Mark swallowed. And what's that? She smiled. I don't need your forgiveness anymore. Mark's face fell. Evelyn. She raised a hand. I have moved on, Mark. And I think it's time you do too. Mark's shoulders slumped. He nodded slowly, accepting his fate. As he and Sarah left, David remained. Evelyn. I know I don't deserve it, but I'm sorry. Evelyn studied him. Unlike Mark and Sarah, she sensed genuine remorse in his voice. Finally, she sighed. I can't change the past, David. But I hope you learn from this. David nodded. Thank you. As he left, Evelyn sat back, exhaling deeply. For years, she had been the disgraced bride. But today, she was the woman they all begged for forgiveness. And that was more satisfying than revenge.